Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is October 12th. On this day in 1933, three men in suits walked into the Allen County Sheriff's Office in Lima, Ohio. They were calm and businesslike. They said they were there from Indiana to pick up a prisoner named John Dillinger. The sheriff asked for paperwork. One of the men smiled, reached under his coat, and instead of credentials, he pulled a gun. Moments later, Sheriff Jess Sarber was lying on the floor, mortally wounded. His wife and deputy were locked in a cell, and America's most talked about bank robber, John Dillinger, was suddenly free again. Today, we're talking about the John Dillinger jailbreak of 1933, its aftermath, and how he was eventually recaptured. Let's get started. When John Dillinger walked out of Indiana State Prison on May 10th, 1933, he didn't waste a minute. Within weeks, he was back to robbing banks, small ones mostly, just in and out. A few thousand here, 10,000 there. His first known job after being granted parole was a bank in New Carlisle, Ohio on June 10th, 1933. He ended up getting about $10,600. By mid-August, he'd hit Bluffton, Ohio, walking out of the Citizens National Bank with roughly $2,100. Local papers described it as a 5-minute robbery. Dillinger was calm, confident, even polite. But as he left, he and his crew sprayed the street behind them with bullets, shattering glass to keep pursuers back. But his luck ran out that September. A tip led detectives to a boarding house on West 1st Street in Dayton, Ohio. Dillinger had been seeing a woman there, Mary Jenkins Longacre, and that romance had helped police close in. At around 10:30 p.m. on September 22nd, officers burst into the room. Dillinger didn't put up a fight. Police found pistols, over $2,000 in cash, and even sacks of carpet tacks, his version of spike strips, ready to scatter behind his car. Dillinger was taken to the Allen County Jail in Lima to face charges for the Bluffton robbery. He told guards that he didn't know anything about the escape plans that they found on him. But 4 days later, he put those plans into action. His friends from Indiana State Prison came to Ohio with smuggled guns, and they were ready to help Dillinger out. At 6:25 p.m. on October 12th, three men in suits stepped through the front door of the Allen County Sheriff's Office, asking to see Sheriff Jess L. Sarber. They said that they were there from Indiana State Prison, and they were there to take custody of John Dillinger. Sarber was a seasoned local lawman, so he did what any sheriff would do. He asked to see their paperwork. One of the men, later identified as Harry Pierpont, opened his coat, but instead of a folder, he pulled a pistol and said, quote, "These are our credentials," end quote. Then he fired. Sarber went down and the men attacked him. When his wife Lucy ran to help, she was forced to hand over the jail keys to stop the assault. The men freed Dillinger, locked Lucy and Deputy Wilbur Sharp in a furnace room, and vanished into the night. A neighborhood boy heard their cries through a basement window and ran to find police. But it was too late. Sheriff Sarber was rushed to Lima Memorial Hospital and pronounced dead just after 8 p.m. The gunmen were gone, and Dillinger, the most wanted man in the Midwest, was back on the road. The official FBI history lists the men by name: Harry Pierpont, Charles Mackley, Russell Clark, who were all recent escapees, and Harry Copeland, a parolee. They hadn't just rescued Dillinger. They'd turned him in to a legend. The breakout lasted less than 10 minutes, but by morning it was front-page news from Ohio to Chicago. People who'd never heard of John Dillinger the day before were reading about a smooth-talking outlaw whose friends could outsmart any lawman. Reporters wrote about it like Pulp Fiction: the daring rescue, the cool criminals, and the fearless woman behind the desk. Once Dillinger was free, the gang moved fast. Within days, they were raiding police stations, not banks, for weapons. On October 14th, they hit Auburn, Indiana. They stormed the station and made off with a Thompson submachine gun, bulletproof vests, and rifles. That same Tommy gun would turn up 80 years later, returned to the police department by the FBI in 2014. A few nights later, they hit the Peru, Indiana station, taking another arsenal of weapons. It was a deliberate pattern. They would arm up and then hit the banks. On October 23rd, they robbed Central National Bank in Greencastle, Indiana. $75,000 was gone in minutes. It was their biggest job yet. But the spree didn't stop there. By late November, they were in Wisconsin, robbing banks in Racine and wounding bystanders. By December, a Chicago police sergeant, William T. Shanley, was dead after a gun battle with Dillinger's men. In January 1934, there was another robbery and another death. Patrolman William O'Malley, who was killed in East Chicago. And that was the one that changed everything. The manhunt went national. On January 23, 1934, a fire at the Hotel Congress in Tucson, Arizona, forced Dillinger's gang to evacuate. Firefighters noticed something odd. Their faces looked familiar, kind of like those men from the wanted posters. Police moved in and were able to arrest Dillinger, Pierpont, Mackley, and Clark. There was no gunfire, just luck and a little civic vigilance. Back in Ohio, Pierpont and Mackley were both convicted of murdering Sheriff Sarber. Each received a death sentence. Mackley died in an escape attempt. Pierpont, wounded in the same, was executed a month later. Russell Clark got life in prison. Sheriff Jeff Sarber's name became a symbol of duty cut short. His death was memorialized in Allen County and across law enforcement circles nationwide. Dillinger's story, though, was far from over. He'd be shipped back to Indiana, locked in what reporters called an escape-proof jail, and less than 2 months later, he'd walk right out again, smiling for the cameras. But that's a story for another day. It all started with a knock on a door, a sheriff doing his job, and 3 men pretending to do theirs. He asked for credentials. They answered with a gun. And that single moment set off one of the most infamous crime waves in American history. October 12, 1933 was the night a small-town jail became the birthplace of the Dillinger legend, and the night a good man gave his life trying to uphold the law. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found today's episode compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It'll help us grow. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!